Well, thank you. You can go ahead and do the applause. Hey, everybody, this is David Baer from Baer on Marketing, and I'm excited to welcome you back to another in our series on the power of reach, which is the book that I'm currently putting together, all about using social marketing platforms for coaches, mentors, and other consultative professionals. And today I am joined by two such professionals. Our good friend John Paduchak, and I'm very, very pleased to welcome for the first time here Cherie Valentine, who is a, now I want to get this right because I don't even know what some of this stands for. So spiritual, intuitive, and EFT healer and coach and mentor. So that's a mouthful. And I'm going to turn it over to Cherie for a moment to let us know what all that means and what it is that you actually do.
Okay. Well, hi, David. Thank you so much for having me here. This is great.
Yeah.
I work with energy, and is in the simplest way of saying that. I help people to find extreme sense of clarity about who they are, awaken the divine self within themselves, see themselves from that space of just truth and beauty, and help them to eliminate and remove any blocks and limiting beliefs that don't allow that to happen for them. So I work very integratively. I use EFT, emotional freedom techniques, which is one form of energy technique that I actually use for live stream, which we'll talk about, as well as spiritual healing through the chakras and through a very shamanistic perspective of working with guides to help me in the work that I do.
So for many of our audience who are in coaching professions, similar professions, helping people through whatever the process is that they're helping them through, clearly there's a lot that people can relate to. And I assume that this is something that you've done before you started communicating about this online, right?
Yes, yes, actually. I was a relationship coach for many years, and in the course of my working with my clients, what I found was a lot of intuitive information coming through, and I didn't quite understand what that was all about or what it meant or what I was supposed to do with it. So I started to do trainings more with working with intuition, working with guides, understanding what that means, while not necessarily putting it out there. So I would work with my clients and help them create their visions. But what I was finding is that so many people were so locked in their story, in their pain, in their trauma from difficult relationships that had hurt them, oftentimes stemming from childhood, that they were not receiving the coaching and moving forward, or even in the space to create, like what love and joy could be, what a harmonious relationship could look like, what creating your life from what your desires could look like. And so I found that by starting to work with them and clearing that pain, clearing the trauma, clearing the patterns that they had been developing was far more effective than just trying to work with them just from the coaching perspective or just intellectually or just on mindset. So I started to teach them how to use breath work, how to use meditation, how to bring in more spiritual practices, how to use ground themselves and just create more space in their life, while we were also creating from this perspective of, well, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? And so I started to see that the two work together really well. Like, to try and just be in the mind and in the cognitive space or the logical space and changing everything there was only a piece of what we needed to do. We also needed to address more the emotional part of who we were and the unconscious part where we hold so much wisdom. And the more that I started to explore that, I just understood how connected that was to our chakras, which are energy centers in our body. And when I started to understand what they represented and what we could learn from that, it just started to grow and grow. So it was a really slow evolution for me to be more vocal with it. In my experience in the past has been that when I'm not listening, when I'm not really stepping up, when I'm not expressing who I'm supposed to be, I get sick or I get taken down with injury. So we're working on changing that pattern right now. But so it's only been, I would say, maybe in the last couple of years that especially more of the intuitive or the shamanistic or the healing has actually, that I've put that out. I've kind of spoken more like around it instead of just verbally with it.
Okay, so I want to understand how, now that we understand what the business is and what the type of work that you do and how you help people, how this has sort of grown and transitioned from the work that you've been doing with people in your local community, in person, to the stuff that you've been doing online, because this is very much the challenge that I see a lot of consultative professionals. I go out in my community. This is a story I tell a lot. I'll go to my local networking meetings, and I'll meet coaches who did this, that, and the other thing. And when they meet me, they learn that I'm a Facebook ads guy, and they'll come up and they'll they'll introduce themselves and say, I just don't understand Facebook. I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. I was told I need to do this, this, and this, and none of it's working. So I'm just going to focus on this local networking stuff that I do, and I'm having so much trouble in this world. So there are enlightened people out there like you, Cherie, who have discovered that there's a path that works for you, not necessarily the path that's going to work for everybody, but that works for you, communicating outside of your local community, actually jumping in front of a camera and setting up your headset or your microphone and talking to a wider audience. And I'm curious to know how that started. Where did that initially come from? How did you jump into this realm in the first place?
Full circle. Gonna lie. I mean, I think I started out back in 2006 or 7, and I had this vision of what could be possible with the internet, even though I didn't know what that meant or how to do it. And I actually met up with Jan Stringer and Alan Hickman back at that time and started to really work with them, and they were confirming for me what was possible just by watching what they were doing, and I easily just seemed to gravitate toward it. And full disclosure, at the time, I was still coming out of a pretty disabling situation, and I hadn't really quite got myself back and didn't know if I ever would. So there was a part of me that said I need to find a way that I can share my guest work with the world in a way that I can also conserve my energy and manage myself, manage what I need to do in order to continue to be healthy. So there was a piece of it. So I did do this whole online approach for quite a bit while I was still being local. But again, didn't know what I was doing, didn't know why I was doing it, and wasn't sure that I really liked it. I just jumped on every bandwagon that every one of my coaches told me to do. So I'm everywhere that you look out there, but did nothing with it for quite a while. So I finally, so that was.
And I'm sure that for our audience that sounds very familiar, right? We're all told, oh, you need to do this, you need to do, and yes. People are hiring, somebody to design their website. They're getting somebody to set up all of their social accounts, and then they don't know what to do with them, or they just sit there dormant. And it sounded like that, you had a little bit of that too, right?
Oh, I did. And so, you just keep moving forward though, and you just keep learning. I mean, for me, this was a world I knew nothing about, so I was determined to learn. So I just soaked it all in while I was just doing it, instead of maybe I could have had a little bit of separation through some of it. But at one point, I think a couple years ago, it was longer than that, I'm losing track of time, I just felt like because I had also started to do a lot of networking and to travel quite a bit, travel all over the United States, travel in Canada, go to do all kinds of trainings, go to all the seminars, really, again, take it all in, meet a lot of people. So social media was good that I could stay in touch with people I'd met all over the world. And I actually started to have a pretty good business doing my coaching online. I would say most of the clients that I had because I had met them and we'd had conversation and they connected with me. But they weren't, I'd met them on my travels or on my workshops or on these different things. And it was starting to just wear on me to travel so much. So I really said it was maybe time to focus on a more local community in a bigger way. And as soon as I did, things lined up for that to happen. And eventually I was in an office for a couple of years in my local, and that was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. But here's the thing that I discovered last year, that still 90% of my clients that I was working with and helping weren't coming through the door. I was in my office and I was on the phone or in Skype or whatnot working with them, but they still weren't just local. So I started to really look at that as things in my life changed, and it was about this time that Andy Lyons, do you know Andy Lyons? And
I don't.
Delicious
And
Advice. Oh, okay. Oh, she's just, well, anyway, she's just a dynamo who lives in this area and has been a wonderful, wonderful supporter. And she was trying to get me to come into Hangouts for 2 years. I just wasn't ready. I wasn't there. I had been doing radio shows. I was hosting my own radio show through A through Zen.fm. I just had an awful lot going on at the time, and I just didn't feel like I could take one more thing on at the time, and I wasn't ready. I was doing YouTube videos. It was okay. I knew how to do that. And then, I don't know, at one point when I finally got into some of what she was doing, a weekly show, so I would watch her shows and I'd come in after into the green room when they weren't recording, and I started to meet a lot of people and a lot of like-minded people, and I saw how it was working. I thought, this might be something to explore. So what I did was I used Hangouts on Air.
and that's, by the way, what we're in right now. We're doing a Hangout on Air. Yep. Yeah.
To create basically a library of content. So I use in a very specific way, and I would have I kept it to 20 minutes or less, where I just was using emotional freedom techniques, which is EFT. It's one of the energy techniques. And every week I would create a video about a certain topic. And I kept it very controlled because it was content that I was creating, and it wasn't really more about all the discussion and conversation. So I would create the 20-minute video that I wanted for content, and then I would stop the recording, and people would come in then, and we would have conversation. And the ease with which, at the time, I'm thinking, this is amazing. First of all, I know I'm going to have the show every week, so I write a blog post about it. Then I get the YouTube, create the event and invite people. I get the embed link from YouTube. And so everything's like good to go, ready on my back end of my website as a blog post. And then I do the show. It's also on YouTube automatically. So now I have a blog post I can share, I have a video I can share, and I've done one thing. And I really started to see how streamlined and great that was for me. And I did see the numbers through my website just like go through the roof, and I don't know if it was because of the consistency. I don't know if it was the YouTube. I don't know if I was sharing it on several channels, and it was probably all of the above. But I noticed a significant difference in the traffic to my website and my free signups.
I want to go back and re-emphasize something that you just outlined, because this is, I think, one of those places where a lot of people get hung up. And it sounds like it's so much stuff that you need to do to accomplish what you've just described, but then you just said, well, I only did one thing, right? You have a video that you've created, and you repurposed it in a bunch of places. I don't know to what extent that blog post had, a lot of writing or a little writing, or maybe it was just embedding the video with a title, but you now have a library of content, you said. You have a blog post, you have a YouTube video, and probably could repurpose that in other places across social media if you wanted to, and take another, 10 minutes after recording it, sending it out places. That sounds like a lot less work than people might think it is, but it can be pretty intimidating and overwhelming, right?
It can be in the beginning, and I think it took a little bit for me to find my flow with it. But once I got over the initial, inertia or discomfort of just learning how to use it and what to do and be in there and be comfortable, I just started to, think about what I was doing. And so it was actually not that difficult because I really just got into a flow. Like I had the steps listed out that I needed to do every single week, knowing for this, and knowing that all of the different channels that it was going to be placed, how much I was going to be able to share it. I was part of a couple of communities on Google Plus that really, were starting to come through regularly and enjoying that. Are we live still?
We are still live. I just shared my screen, but only you can see it, and we're about to jump over and fast forward to the next part of your story. So I'm getting ready for it.
Okay. Oh yeah. So anyway, it's not once you start to have the experience of something, and then stop and look at what you're doing and what's involved, you can actually make it pretty streamlined. And I'm not a streamlined kind of girl, by the way. It takes me a while, but the less I get out of my own way, the easier I see everything starting to flow.
Brilliant, and I think that's an important lesson for a lot of coaches out there too, because we have all these great insights among our coaching community, but getting out of one's way is, I think, a really important lesson. Anyway, I want to jump over to the thing that that I teased people about in promoting this, and that's what we're looking at now on my screen, which is your Blab. What do we call it? A channel? Is that the right term? I don't even know. Blab is so new. I don't know all the terminology there.
I don't see the Blab channel. Probably yes. Sounds good.
And so Blab, for folks who don't know, is a live streaming platform that's been around for, I think, short of 4 months now. Maybe just over 4 months. Can't I remember the you know John? You're about to chime in here.
Longer than that. I would say it started like around. When were we really getting on it? It was before. I think it was like around October, September.
Okay. I just remember the 100 days was not too
Been around
long
a
ago.
little bit. Wasn't that
That's
long
where
ago.
I'm coming up with my numbers.
Okay.
And it's basically taking aspects of live streaming apps like Periscope or Meerkat, where you can hold your phone up and address an audience out there who might be watching, and the elements of Google Hangouts, where you can have multiple people together having a conversation, and putting it on a new platform that's really taken off, and it has gotten an amazingly devoted community pretty darn quickly, and you are one of the people who has found a way to utilize this platform pretty effectively. And so I want to understand what you've been doing there. Maybe then you can backtrack and talk a little bit about the transition that you told me about the other day from Hangouts to Blab. So I'll send it back to you.
Okay, great. Well, I'd heard of Blab, I think maybe by midsummer, around August, and Blab and Meerkat and Periscope were starting to become the big rage, and one of my friends and I, who are colleagues and accountability and support partners, got together each week, and we were both talking about whether this was a good strategy for us, how would we use it, kind of getting excited. But still not quite ready. And I had taken a break from doing from Tappy Break and Hang Out on Air for the summer. I usually give myself a little space in the summer. So I thought, well, I started to explore it. So I started to just go on and watch what was happening on Periscope and what people were doing and how they were using it. I did a little research on Meerkat versus Periscope and decided to go with Periscope. And then when I was sort of had some downtime, I had the Blab app on my phone, so I was sort of just watching Blabs. Like, I was just seeing what people were doing with Blabs, who was on them, what were they talking about, what did it look like, and I started to see some of the same people. I started to feel drawn towards some people, and before I knew it, I was invited in as a guest host on one. I was sitting on my phone. I'm like, sure, why not? Give me a minute. And I ran up to my office, turned on the light, sat on my computer where I'd be more comfortable.
Yep.
So,
by the way, I know this story very well. Not your story, but I know this experience because I did this too. I was lying in bed. I had my app, open, and I click on something, and there's a picture of our friend right here, John Pavichak. And he says, so I'm clicking on my phone, and he says, "Hey, David Baer, why don't you come on in and let's talk about wine?" And my wife, who's lying next to me, kind of looked at me like, "What's going on?
Who's talking about you on this?" Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling. It's great. But boy, talk about getting brought into a community. So I literally spent the month of September, I guess I'd say vetting Blab, literally just going to a bunch of Blabs, showing up. I felt really comfortable and drawn, and invited in by a few people immediately. So of course I felt safer going to those. Sure. But then from there you meet people in the stream, and it just started to open up from there. And I was co-hosting quite a bit because I would just be there and they'd ask and I'd say sure. So I was learning, and I was just learning it, and I sat with it. And my struggle had been, okay, why would I use this? How am I going to use it? Tappy Break, in the way that I had been doing it, worked really well, and I wasn't quite sure how I was going to transition it over to Blab since it's not as controlled an environment. So I kind of went back and forth.
Can you explain what you mean by not as controlled an environment for people who don't understand the difference?
Oh, sure. So when you're in a Hangout on air, you invite people in, but they need to be invited in, and they need to have the link in order to come in and have the conversation with me. And if so, that you can control it that way. So what I did do was I did have 2 or 3 people that would come in. They were like my support team, so to speak.
Yep.
But I could, as you're doing, have an option so that they weren't visible while we were doing the Blab. So that way I could, because it was actually like a mini workshop. So I wanted to be in a place where I could take you from beginning to end. So with Blab, because it's open, anyone can come in at any time. They necessarily can't come into the video unless you allow them. So that, I mean, you can control it more in that way. But for me, again, wanting to go through a process from beginning to end, having watched enough Blabs where people are just always popping in, asking questions, typing, I couldn't be doing that and also be in a space where I'm providing you like a real 20-minute mini workshop. So I struggled a little bit with that, but I said, I'm willing. Let me try it. I won't know if I don't try it. The first time it was really awkward for me, and that was okay. I said, well, let me try it again. And then I got a call from a friend who loved my tapping breaks and said, hey, would you be okay if I kind of was your voice and came in as your co-host when you do them in Blab? So that solved that issue, because now I have somebody who's kind of manning the stream and whatnot and letting people know, hey, we're in the middle of something, she'll talk, whatever. So I found a solution, basically. And I also thought it was also a way to bring this to a whole nother audience.
Now, you brought up this idea of co-host a couple of times where you said you were invited in and then you also had somebody offer in. And I think that is a really important part of a successful Blab strategy that I think you've kind of, I was going to say quadrupled now, if I remember what you said to me correctly, is that you now have multiple co-hosts in Blab, don't you?
I do. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that was very intentional. I felt like I had lost the pulse for a while because I got caught up in the Blab Kool-Aid like we all did, I think, usually.
We all did, yes.
I really had to step back and just say, okay, if I'm going to be on here, I need to be really intentional and purposeful. Okay. I have work to do. I have a business I'm building. I have things that, yes, it's enjoyable and fun, but if that's all I want it to be, that's great. It needs to be maybe in a different way. If I'm going to use it in my business, then I really have to have intention and purpose. So I looked at what that meant to me, and I realized, well, I had been sort of going into Blabs that were maybe more business related, more marketing related, more social media related, mostly because for me, I was learning. But I was also starting to be associated with that, and that is not my area of expertise. So I realized that I needed to be either going into finding Blabs or creating my own that were allowing me to share and talk about and have conversation about those things that I love and that I'm interested in, and that make more sense for my potential client base. I didn't want to do it by myself because I am far more interesting and engaging if I have somebody else, and I've discovered that, through the years. And also it's a little unsettling because if I really didn't want to show up and have nobody come into the lab talking to myself, which is ridiculous.
It's easy to get kicked out too if something doesn't go quite right and you're on your own.
Right.
Yeah. So
right, David?
That's true. It's happened to me. Yeah.
So I just said, what? Let me look around. So I actually, and the other wonderful thing about this was, though, I've actually started to embrace social media in a way I never had before. And really love it and really see the value of why I want to be engaging and using social media and how to use it in such a way. I'm such an experiential learner, I've discovered. So for me to have like such a concrete, and the one thing about Blab is it is integrated with Twitter. So, I mean, I not only now just do my shows and I'll tell you all the things that I do with them, but I have a very easy way to see who somebody is. Because they've either commenting in the stream or they've come into a seat. So now I can go find them on Twitter. I can reach out to them personally and say, hey, I'd love to know more about you. Could we have a video chat? And, and it's not like just this random kind of reaching out to people. And it's something that maybe if I were just watching a Twitter stream chat or something that I would naturally be drawn to. So you get to see people who they are. You really get to get a sense of who somebody is.
And by the way, that's how I reached you, right? I came to you on Twitter after finding you on Blab. So it works, and you just have to have what my people call a little bit of chutzpah to be able to, go out and do it.
So here's my chutzpah story, and that got me onto Blab co-hosts. I wanted to do a show on intuition. I mean, it's a big deal. I really wanted to start talking about teaching people how to use it, understanding what it really is. So I went into Twitter search and put hashtag intuition in the search and looked at what was there, and I was caught by a couple of articles, and I read them, and I thought, wow, what a different perspective he brings to this than I do. He's like in the corporate world working with intuition, and like I'm more in the spiritual world working with it. And so I had no idea who he was, never heard of him. I sent a direct message and said, I don't know if you'd be interested or not, but I read some of your posts. I'm really loving your perspective on intuition. Would love to chat with you. Would you be interested in maybe discussing the possibility of being a co-host on Blab? And I can't believe that's something I've never done before. So I know that was spirit working through me or something. What was it?
There's intuition working for you.
I totally was. And we had a wonderful conversation. There was such a synergy and connection, and we've been hosting now since October. So I actually had reached out to a few other people, again, because they were in a seat on Blab, or there's comments in the stream, which is very much a part of the show, and I really like how it can be really integrated. So I've just been reaching out to people. So from that, I got a second co-host, and then one other person we had connected through Google. So we're doing a show co-hosting, and I'm even starting to schedule shows that are mine, because I know all the connections I've made. There's going to be a co-host anyway. They'll just show up. That happened today. I totally spaced that my co-host couldn't do a show today. So I went into the show that was scheduled thinking it was our show today, and it's next week's. So I said, I guess it was my week. So I went and quickly, scheduled it, started it. I'm on there. I'm texting him, are you coming? He's like, I told you I couldn't do this week. I'm like, so I was just about ready to shut down, and I look, and, you can look up and see how many people have come in. And I was like, okay, hey, everyone. And someone jumped in the seat and said, let's go. And I said, well, let's go. So we just went with it. So it was great.
If only I'd known, I would have filled in.
Anytime.
So, all right. So I want to understand a little bit about. We have these various streaming platforms. You talked a little bit about how you were using Hangouts. You had a structure to them. I'm assuming that there's still also a structure in the Blabs. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so, how does all of this feed the business? Because ultimately, we're in business, right? We're trying to develop our audience to be people who, as leaders, as coaches or consultants, we're providing service, we're providing guidance, we're providing help, but we can't do this, out of our own pockets, or out of our own time. This is a lot of time that clearly you've been investing on these platforms. So here's the big question: is how does it all move toward feeding your business?
Great question. I had to ask myself that question too, David. So I was like, I sat down and I really looked at what was the value for me to spend my time doing this versus something else, and what did I maybe need to let go of or shift or look at what I was doing a little differently. So that was the first thing I did, was to step back and sort of evaluate. And I actually did. I hired a social media coach for 3 months to really help me see the strategy that's possible, come up with ideas, brainstorm with me, work with it, and I did find that really helpful. But mostly it was my own experience, again, knowing my time, how much time I have, how I use my time, and all of that. I looked at it, and I realized that that two things were happening. Some of my blabs were actually already in alignment with blog posts I had written. So I could embed those blabs into previous blog posts.
So again, repurposing content, which you talked about earlier, that's great.
Yeah, so using content I'd already written for the initial show. So I wasn't trying to recreate the wheel. I already had amazing content. Now I'll get it out in a different way instead of it being a blog post. or, you know, maybe a static YouTube video that I'd had. Now we'll have conversation around this and bring people into it. So that was what I started to do. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And then that was starting to feel just a little overwhelming to me, only because some of them weren't related, so now they needed a written blog post, and I know that they didn't. However, I just felt like I didn't want my blog stream to just look like all these videos that just says this is a replay of such and such. I really wanted to bring a little bit more personality into it, give a little bit more context to what you were going to watch in the video. So that was like, so I thought about what I could do, and what I decided to do, and this is working really well for me, is that I have my web support person create a live stream page for me. So it's still a blog post. However, because we have all these different categories, I can choose how I want them to show up. So anything that I really want, anything that's a blab or a video that I do is found on my live stream page. And then on my regular blog posts will still be blog posts, and I still write 1 or 2 a week. And I still go in and write a little bit about the other ones, but I got into a flow of how to do that because of the way most of my blabs are scheduled the same time each week for the most part. I realized, I can schedule these out, so every day I have something being posted. So it doesn't have to go out right away. I can go in after the show, just take 10 minutes, capture, write a little bit, schedule it for the morning. You know, so every day, and then the 2 days I know I need to write, I get them written and I have them scheduled. So once for me, I saw how easy that could be. That was good. And then I can further create, classification on my website so that I have a link that I can share. So if you're looking for any conversation that, you know, Art Jones and I are having around, you know, Tao marketing, which is, you know, harmony and alignment, you can find them all. You can find all the ones on Intuition with Mike and I. You can find all the ones on Ask the Mentor and Get Unstuck with Cynthia Bazin and I. You know, and so I'm able to like even classify them and make them easy to search for or easy to share.
This is all still driving traffic to you outside of Blab to your website. I'm still curious how once people get to your website and are consuming this content, they become more invested in wanting to work with you and what options you present and how you present them, because I think that's a place that a lot of people are really confused about. You know, how do I get them to come in the door to the office, or how do I get them to schedule that phone call with me, or whatever it is that is the entry point into their business?
I have that. I mean, it's pretty obvious on my website. So if it's really very big, you know, 3 meditations, you know, set your day for success, sign up. I mention it in every blog post. I mention it in every video. And I don't know how much of the video people are consuming. You know, sometimes they're long. Sometimes the conversation's so rich that instead of me going for the sake of shortness, I let it go. And then I can repurpose and chunk things down as I want to, because I hire someone to. But this is what I feel, is that they're getting a sense of who I am in a way they never could any other way. Like even on a lot of the YouTube videos, you know, they're not the same. Like they're very conversational. So you're getting to see who I am professionally and what I know, but you're also seeing who I am as a person. You're seeing like that I have like the same challenges and struggles that you've had. That, you know, and here's what, you know, I'm very open and honest about who I am and what I've been through, because I really want people to understand that there's always hope. You know, we're always moving, we're always growing. There's always different ways of going about things. So and plus I feel like I love connecting. I love community. So it's not just me on these videos, you know, you've got people that are coming through, so my co-hosts or anyone that's in the seat that comes through. I open it up for people to come in so we can have a rich discussion, because, you know, you're going to say something or share something that maybe, you know, I wouldn't have thought of, but someone's going to hear that, and that's going to be great, and I want somebody to hear that. Or you're going, you know, it's going to work for me, and I can expand on that, and we work off each other. So I'm not just there. It's not just about me, but they're also getting to see who I am with other people. So I like that.
Is amazingly valuable about video in general, and I see John nodding his head down there. Is our ability to show our personality, show ourselves off. You know, I often have people who see my videos and especially like my trainings and say, you know, David, you got to clean that up. You have too many ums and ahs. And it's like, no way, that's me. That's what they're going to get. And you know, and so I think there's something pretty amazing about this medium that really helps get people to know us. I didn't want to. I looks like you have something else to say.
Yeah,
I don't want to. Go ahead.
Well, there's one other thing I found that I've been loving, and it's called Live PodPress. But basically, what happens is I purchased this app, this plugin, and automatically anything I host or co-host shows up as a draft in my blog posts. And when you use that, you can actually put certain links in there. So under the video, you can click a link that says, "Oh, listen audio only." Or I send you to a page on my website that tells you all about tapping and what is tapping break, because that's one of the things I do each week. You know, if I have something I'm promoting, there's a link there for people to click. So you can actually customize each and every one, customize a little bit more to be sending people to your site for things that might be of interest. And everything obviously is related to what the Blabs are about when I'm sending them somewhere.
So this is a WordPress plugin. John, you seem to know what it is. I think I've come across something like this. What are you?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a new one, but I know Simple Video Press was one.
Sure.
That, it's the same guy that did it.
It is. He has a bunch of them.
He has a couple different ones. I don't know if it's the same one or a different one.
But you know, I wanted to get back to this whole concept of the monetization, and I think you've covered it nicely, and I want to just revisit those little key points there, because you're driving people, you're getting their attention out there on Blab. More people are discovering you, maybe because of a topic, or they're being invited in, and they learn about you. Is there a call to action when you do a Blab, saying, "Hey, you know, this is where you can come to learn more about me"? Is that
Always, yes. I most always say, you know, if nothing else, if you haven't downloaded my 3 meditations, they're only 5 minutes, and they're going to make such a difference in your life. Please go do that.
Is that an email opt-in to join a list? Great.
Yeah, it is. And then, and I'm clear with it. Like, it's upfront that people know that. And unless there's something really specific going on, sometimes, you know, I'm really looking. I just want to have some conversation, so I might put out there, you know, go to this link and click and get in my schedule. So let's have a private conversation, especially if you have any questions about this. So I'll put that out at times. But most consistently, I you know, why not just get you started with something that's going to be really useful to you? You know, that's going to make a difference. It's free, and then we start to build a relationship through our email marketing now.
Brilliant. And it sounds like people get to consume some amazingly helpful, instructive content about lots of different subjects, and it's when they come to your website, it's surrounded with calls to action to take the next step, whatever that next logical step may be, and this plugin that you've just referred to helps guide them even more specifically, which is great.
Yes, it's Simple Live Press, John. That's what it's called. Simple Live Press. Yeah.
Cool. John, you have anything else? Because I know we are at the end of the time that I promised everybody we would be wrapping up, and I think I've learned a ton here and gotten some insight into you know, sort of the behind the scenes of somebody's experience, which is what I'm trying to demonstrate here.
Yeah. One more thing I'm going to add to that.
Please.
Okay. So once we've done all of that, and I have blog posts to share, I share them. You know what I mean?
So they go back out on.
I don't just, because, you know, we still need to bring people to our site sometimes, and just Blab alone may not do it. But now, instead of sending people to a Blab page and say, oh, if you want to find out what we talked about, I can send them to my website. So that's why I create blog posts out of everything, because then I can share them as blog posts on Twitter, you know, on my Facebook business page, on Pinterest, on Instagram. And in all honesty, I just hired someone to do that for me.
But that's something we all aspire to be able to do, right? Is to be at a place where we can afford to hire somebody to do these things that we're so scared of doing in the first place. It's great.
Well, I know. It's like I didn't want to hire anyone until I knew why I was hiring them and what I was doing with it and what I wanted done with all of it. So for me, it was very much needing to be hands-on and having an understanding and having a picture of what it was what I wanted it to be and needed to be, and then looking at all the things I'm doing. And I honestly said, what are the things that I'm consistently doing. I do them well. I enjoy them. They light me up. And what are the things that just, don't, like the opposite, and just take a lot out of me. And so one of that was that, I said, I love to create. I love to create the content, and I love to engage with people. So I found those are the things I didn't want to give up. Obviously, that's who I am. But to be able to just take all of the great content that I have and share it in different ways, that to me I thought would be helpful. So I'm taking that step for the very first time.
Well, that's great. That's great. Hey, Shri Valentine, I have been watching you and seeing how you've been using this platform. I'm so glad that I had the chance to get a positive response when I reached out on Twitter to invite you on here, and I've learned a ton, and I hope our audience has as well. And there's a very simple, basic strategy that you've taught us. It looks like you're doing so much stuff, but really, it's very intentional. There's that word again, and very straightforward, and it's something that I think others can model and see the same success that you've seen. So I thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us, and I hope that we have an opportunity to meet up like this again.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.